Thank you. All right, let's focus
Wonder if
in.
this is going on, I think. This is probably going to go on during the
no,
presentation. This is right under event. Yep.
Who's the spotlight? But there's
Exactly. Yep.
We're getting ready to start.
Yeah, it's right here and right there, and these are the two places our DMs would usually sit. So we were just bundle up.
Why do you think I did?
Right over in the corner.
In the corner where there is no fountain.
Is the action starting?
1 more minute.
Okay. Soon. Coming up. Coming up next. Coming up. Coming up. Coming up next. Nova. Road building doing dumps. Coming up next. Now we're just gonna have some waiting music.
Nice. Oh my god, yeah. They're not we can go.
And welcome to. You can introduce
I will.
action.
Alright. About ready to start?
Yeah.
My name is Nova. I also go by K, but in the store I go by Nova because we have another K here. But I was the person who kind of came up with the idea to do this type of workshop thing. Everyone kind of extrapolated. Yay!
Woo!
Everyone kind of extrapolated more and was like, hey, let's do a whole thing. I was like, that's awesome. I expected 5 people to show up, and now we have a whole room back here. And I'm like a little freaked out by that, but that's fine.
You should have been the first person to go.
Not.
Either the first person or the last person.
First person, last person. That's fair. I'll think about that next time. But my big thing when it came to wanting to do this workshop was please learn from my mistakes as a world builder and someone who crafted a world twice, deleted the first one, and has practically switched everything in the second version of this world that I have made. So we're going to do world building 101 / do's and don'ts. So starting with this, I think the biggest thing that anyone needs to kind of remember when getting into world building for not just TTRPG stuff, because I'm also a writer outside of this, it's just I prefer writing this because I have to do a lot less work. My players do all the work that I don't have to do. But I think starting with scope and concept. So those kind of blend into each other, and those are going to be kind of a thing that you're going to need to go back and forth on a little bit. But the biggest thing is I'll just use my own 15-second pitch for my world to get us started. So my world is Zlot Ayer. Terrible name. I'm autistic and I'm bad at naming things, so you're gonna hear a few more names throughout this, and they're bad, so don't worry about that. But my world is Zlot Ayer has gone through an industrial revolution. The magic of the world disappeared about a couple thousand years ago. There are no more magic like practitioners that are masters at their crafts, because magic has only started coming back into the world about 100 or 200 years ago. That's my pitch. That's my world. That's what I pitch to my players when going, I want to play in this world. What do you want to explore in this world? And I think that question is something that you often don't hear people talk about when talking about world building. What do your players want to look for? What are your players excited about? What are your players going to explore? Because when they tell you, oh, I think this is really interesting, I want to play a druid in this world. Okay, you want to play a druid. So that means I need to figure out what a druid looks like in this world and what complications for a druid looks like in this world, right? I want to play a paladin. Great, I need a pantheon. Now. If I don't have a cleric or a paladin or any other character who cares about the deities, I need a pantheon, but I need a pantheon with bullet points. I don't need a pantheon that has, these two gods hate each other because of this reason, these two are siblings, and this one, married this person. I don't need all that if I don't have a person who's going to explore those things. So the biggest thing is that kind of pulls in your scope of knowing what your players are going to be looking for and looking into what they're actually going to go after in your setting. So that's basically what this 45 minutes to an hour is just going to be. I'm going to repeat that a lot. Don't have to write it every time, but I am going to repeat it a lot. So I'm going to take a drink of water here because I am parched. So looking at my concept, I have a setting that has a lot of technology. I have a setting that doesn't necessarily have low magic. The magic can still be very high. It's just no one is a master at it. So there's not going to be 20 arch wizards in this setting unless they're time traveling, which is a thing. And I'm going to write that down because that sounds cool. But you're not going to have a place of schooling for these for wizards. So if I have a player who goes, I want to be a wizard in your world, great. You are crafting magic. You are creating spells that no one has seen in thousands of years. So you're probably going to have to go to temples and ruins and delve into the mysteries and wonders of this world to find those things. Okay, so now I know, here's this checklist that I start getting off of what my players want, the scope of my world, and the concept of my world. And leaning on scope now, what is your campaign going to be about? And I know I'm talking about world building here, but this also kind of goes into campaign building. If your campaign is about a city, you want to, like, say you're doing this world and you want to explore just technology, and technology is the more important thing for you as a DM. Cool. Make a technological city. So you need to know who runs that city, where that city is, what climate that city's in, all the complications that come with that. But that's a checklist that you're getting. And a lot of what you need to do when starting this is just checklists, because that's how you snowball and figure out more things as you go. Also, please stop me with any questions during. So, rules of the setting. Magic, not a lot of people know magic. If there are people that know magic, maybe 5th level casters, right? That's probably an elf from age 10 to age 200 that has now practiced magic, level 5. That's pretty powerful. There's still, 10 levels or 5 more levels of casting above that person. So you can still have these things in your world if you're going for this type of setting. But that's where you kind of find the biggest things are the niches of those things. So that's the rules of the world. Deities. My world lost all of its magic. Divine magic is magic. What happened to the gods of my world? Oh no, I didn't think of that. Okay, well, they didn't die. I didn't want to have no pantheon and have weird new pantheon and then have to explain an old pantheon and all this other stuff. So the world-ending event that caused the magic to go away, because that's what I decided caused the magic to go away, damaged the gods so much that their etheric essence was knocked off of them and they all got amnesia and didn't have any powers for a while. So during that time they had to kind of collect themselves, and this is what kind of crafted them in who they are today through the primordial energies, as I call it throughout my stuff, which is just chaotic, lawful. This is how I explain they are a lawful good deity. They have lawful and good energies placed upon them when they were repowering up. So that is one of the rules of my setting now. These primordial energies are now important. So now I have to write about these things. So again, it's all about checklists. When looking at your scope, we're doing you want to play in a city. Do we want to start them in that city? No, starting them with all that technology right around them. We want to kind of start as ease them into, this is a fantasy world that is very anachronistic and has a lot of technology. They're in the same country as that city. So you need to build the city, you need to build the country, whatever town or village they're in during that first few sessions. And then in that first, hey, this is my world, what we talked about in Tony's and Nick's and all of them, what are you looking for in a game? Are you guys RP heavy? Are you guys combat heavy? Are you guys kind of a mix of both? What is it? So they're a very heavy RP group. That's a very different prepping style and different world building style that I should focus on than starting with, well, I'm just going to build kind of a mix of it. You can do that if you don't know who your players are, just to be safe. But if they're an RP heavy group, what is a quintessential RP campaign? I think just political intrigue. That's a huge like breadth of campaigns that you can have for political intrigue, and that's a huge heavy RP campaign. So I know one of my parties wants to do a political intrigue heavy RP campaign in this world. Cool. That means I need the big players of the world, or at least the section of the world that they're going to be in, and then not a lot about the creatures of the world as much, at least fleshed out, as this other stuff, because this is what they're going to interact with. So it's all about using your pre-campaign world building time on stuff that you're going to be, right in front of you working on. Now that doesn't mean you're not going to work on stuff that you want to work on, because like for me, I really am into creature design. I want to know how this creature evolved into its form right now. Was a wizard doing some stuff and now we have an owlbear? Or was it just, some stuff happened and now this bear has a beak and like feathers, and it's like, oh, interesting, how did that happen? Where is that from? Yada yada yada. So all those things can fall under scope rules and all that stuff. And again, I'm going to say this more and more and more. Talk to your party. Please talk to your party. Build what they want to see. You can go back and build things while you're like, I know they're not going to go over here right now, but this is important to the campaign. So while you're doing this stuff, you can start filling out those bullet points about the gods, because the gods are important to your campaign. Eventually, the PCs are going to come across a thing that does something with the deities, right? Cool. Start building off of that slowly. Sorry, I kind of lost my place here as I was rambling. So, how much should you make? And when should you stop working on something? Kind of a hard question to answer, but in the how much you should make, you should really think about just making the stuff that, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to repeat myself so much in this. Please just make stuff that your party will interact with. Please. I have made stuff for I'm super into like Vikings and longships and like I love Arctic stuff. I live in Minnesota. I kind of have to at this point. I've done it, my 28 years of living. So I made a large open expanse, and I got into like here are the tribes and stuff. Here's this thing. This tribe believes this stuff. There's a conflict going on up here. My party's all moving south from where they started. All of that, I could just have an idea that like there are tribes, there is a war. I could have done that. I could have just left it at that and been fine and been in the same spot. Yes.
Just to that end, one of the things for some game masters, they derive a certain sense of fun from filling in all those details.
Yeah.
And that is a perfectly legitimate thing.
For sure.
That you need to just separate from an expectation of my players will interact with this. Like if that's something that you derive a ton of joy from,
Yeah.
by all means do that, but don't resent your players.
For-
It's like, well, I fleshed all this stuff out and then they went this other direction.
Exactly. I should say that, yeah. I should go back on my thing and say, you can prep these things that you're into, and you should. Eventually, some players will interact with that, whether it's this party or a future party if you're going to continue playing in the same setting. But that is something that I think is important. Prep what you like, but also prep smart about where your party is going to go as well. There's a certain amount of fleshing out that you can do along them playing, and even just go, oh, you found this chunk of a ship that has this insignia on it. 45 sessions in the future, they see that insignia on a longship. You're like, all right, I got them. They're interested. They're going to follow that longship now. There you go. Now you can use your prep. But you can kind of do those things as you kind of gotten the campaign going. You can go back and always flesh those things out. That's one thing I think that I thought I needed to do when starting world building. I need my world finished. I need it finished for my party to go through. No, you don't. Your world is never finished. I forgot my prop, but you have seen the Tal'Dorei book out there from Critical Role? It's the purple one with the purple dragon on it. That book is like this thick. That is one continent. This is one continent, and Matt, motherfucking Mercer, said that book's not finished. It's unfinished. I had to send it out unfinished. And I'm like, dude, this book about one continent unfinished? Okay, dude, you're overachieving a little bit, my friend. But I think a big thing when I was seeing those things, and I saw all these other like long form D&D games going, or even just my friends' worlds who have been playing in them for years, I didn't really realize, oh, that started off as a single town, and then kind of grew into a country, and then kind of grew into a continent, and then grew into a world, right? So you can start with a village and build a world. Most people start that way. And that's where that scope and concept come in. So, scope. My campaign is taking place in this city. That's where it's taking place. I don't expect to leave that city. Always suspect your players will leave. Whatever breadcrumbs, like we were saying in the mystery one, they will go left when everything is pointing to right. All these things. You can have a giant sign being like, go this way. This is look, the big bad guy, he's torturing people over here. Yeah, but like Phil's over this way, and we want to go talk to Phil. He was the drunkard at the bar yesterday, and we just want to make sure he got home all right. It's like, all right. Well, Phil, I did actually write. Phil was going on vacation, so now you got to go all the way over here, right? But let's get into kind of some bigger picture stuff. Creation of your world. Don't always need it. I think having an idea of it is nice, because once your players start delving into some things that might deal with the creation of the world, it might be nice to answer those questions.
Is this more of a world creation myth, or?
That depends, right? So like, how long ago was the world created? Most people don't really have a stern idea in most fantasy settings of this is the concrete, this is what happened, yada, yada, yada. In my world, the world wasn't, I don't know how the world was created. I know that it was found by the gods. And I was like, are the gods aliens? Maybe, whatever. We'll figure that out. They're extra-dimensional beings at least, but they found this world, and then they started putting things into the world, even though there were already things there. So like, my world, giants and elementals were on this world before anything else. So that informed a few things about how this world looked when I was making a map poorly. I might add, I'm not an artist. But that's kind of how I envisioned the world starting. But your world could be, you're all in the dream of a giant with a blue eye, and that's why the sky is blue. And it's like, cool, that's great. The story is someone's trying to wake up the giant and destroy the world. Great, we gotta keep this giant asleep, guys. So that's, creation can be really important to the story, but it also can be kind of like middling. It's like, yeah, the gods created a world. These are the things that kind of happened, ... whatever.
Keep playing that song, Yagi.
Yeah, exactly. Pantheon, I've kind of already touched on this. Yeah, most fantasy settings need a pantheon because most places have clerics and, paladins and other religious classes that need something to derive their power from. But if you're playing in Cyberpunk, you probably don't need deities. You can do a little bit of stuff there, but again, it's kind of using your time properly, and prepping stuff that's going to be useful for the campaign first. So bullet points on your gods, great. Paladin, let's flesh out at least the 3 gods that they're going to interact with the most. And one thing, and I know we've already said this with basically everybody, steal things, please steal things. It's fine to fully create your own pantheon, and that's cool. Anyone who does that, I bow down to you. There are too many people and too many names that I need to come up with for a pantheon that I just go, all right, these are the ideas I like, these are cool names that I want to attach to these things. My pantheon in my world is like half a little bit of the pantheon from Pathfinder. I play Pathfinder 2e, by the way, so once I start saying terms that sound weird, that's because I play Pathfinder 2e and not D&D 5e, at least primarily. But I stole like half the pantheon from that, and then the other like half of the pantheon, I was just like, yeah, I bought Matt Mercer's book. I'm just going to take these guys. We're going to switch their names up a little bit. And no one watches Critical Role at my table, so this is fine. And even if they did, just kind of be honest and be like, yeah, I took some of these guys, and you're going to recognize some of this stuff, and that's fine. Most players are totally fine with it. No one should expect you to be 100% coming up with all your own original ideas.
Be the Romans.
Yeah, exactly.
Just, oh, Zeus? Jupiter's better.
Jupiter's better. Yeah, it's a way cooler name.
Pax Romana, just get all the gods.
Exactly.
I like to credit what I steal and
Yeah.
see if I can get the members of my table to like check out that media.
Yeah, for sure.
And everything in my game happens in Neverwinter because I just could not. Like,
That's fair.
Like,
A lot.
build city, it's done. I'm
Yeah.
like, just put it in.
Yeah, building city building. No, this thing over here. There it is. Yep, that's the city in your raid. Yep. It's named Neverwinter. Aha! I did it. It's mine now. But yeah, crediting people and crediting like things is really great. One of my players watched Arcane while playing the game, and they're like, "Is this a lot of League of Legends stuff?" I was like, "I said that like at the beginning of the campaign. I like League of Legends lore. The game's kind of, but like the lore is super cool and it's got really interesting tech in it. So yeah, this place that's Piltover. You're in Piltover, like." So use the things around you that excite you, and maybe even excite your players to inform your world and steal from those things, and maybe twist the ideas a little bit to make them, your own, and you don't just have, yeah, this is the enforcer. She has long blue hair, and yeah, it's Caitlyn. Yeah, it's Caitlyn, guys. Don't worry about it. But you can use other people's ideas as your own.
A good one is just also to just take two ideas and just mash them together.
Smash
So
them.
I had a session that I just straight up called it Event Horizon / Fury Road.
That's amazing. I want to play that game.
And I was just saying, characters have a hard time, or you're having a hard time with an NPC. Taking two characters from vastly different films, and just going, okay, we're just kids. It's just there you go.
Yeah, there we go. There you are.
Chocolate and peanut butter. You got
Mhm.
Faye from Dune. You have Inigo Montoya. Suddenly you have this fiery redhead.
Yeah.
It's got mind powers. Everybody's like, okay, this dude. Who's this dude? Sweet.
Another thing for the big picture stuff is basic history. I think one thing that a lot of people, and this is Tolkien included, I love Tolkien. I'm not bad-mouthing Tolkien here. God dang, he kind of messed up a lot of fantasy writers, because no, you don't need to know every leaf and history of every plant in the world, which he didn't, right? It just seemed like he did because of his writing style. He didn't chronicle everything. You don't have to chronicle everything. This is where bullet points are the most important. I know that these nations had a conflict. I know the results of that conflict. That conflict was 2,000 years ago. That conflict probably doesn't have as much bearing as the thing that happened 100 years ago on this nation, that when two of these nations don't even exist anymore, right? Raising your hand or scratching?
No,
Scratching?
scratching,
Gotcha, you're
sorry.
good.
So micro, not
There-
macro.
exactly. It very much so. And I think the closer you get to your modern history stuff, that's when you can get a little bit more detailed. Because the things that happened in, in our world that happened, over 500 years ago, while those things can have a lot of bearing on what's happening here just because of how the social things worked out, more people are affected by the Iraq War than, World War II, technically speaking, right now, in our collective consciousness. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. Basic history is a little bit more important, at least detail-wise, than your big, broad history. Your big moments, I technically know more what happened in the world-ending event that happened 200,000 years ago, but that's because I also planned to run a campaign in there, and that was my fault. I did that. But I also know granularly what happened 8 years ago when this nation attacked this nation, Fire Nation attacked, everything changed. Which that was 100 years, and that had a lot of effect, more than just, the stuff that happened pre the Fire Nation attack, right? Yeah, exactly. And then the Airbender showed up, and then everything was fine. Well, eventually. Child soldiers, though, so, so yeah. What is this thing? No, we're not going to go over that. We already technically went over that. All right. And then another big thing, depending on how you're going to run things, I'm stubborn, and I did not like how the Pathfinder ancestries, which is D&D races, worked in the setting. I liked the concepts behind them, but I wanted them to be mine. I did not want them to look or feel exactly like the stuff from Paizo. I wanted them to be mine. So I painstakingly made every single one of them a little different. and change them to my world. Which is fair, my world's very different than Paizo's world. It has a lot of technology, so that's gonna have a lot of differences on that. So when creating life, as I'm putting it in here, you want to kind of use your concept of your world to inform how that would affect the, big name fantasy ancestry. So dwarves, elves, orcs, goblins, gnomes, halflings, right? Those are kind of like the 6 that everybody assumes are going to be in a setting. Cool. So those ones at least, how do you change them to make them fit your setting better? So my setting, really weird from most other fantasy settings, I wanted dwarves and elves to not be as big of players in like the grand scheme of things. I wanted them to still have a lot of weight, and for a moment, almost cut them completely because I was like, I don't want a Tolkien fantasy. I want it to be very different, and I was being kind of stubborn on that. But eventually one of my friends was like, well, look at what one thing you like from both of those ancestries and build on that. So I was like, dwarves, I like the clan and family and tradition and that stuff. That's the stuff I like about dwarves that I want to bring into the setting. So my dwarves are very different from other dwarves. They're not stonemasons. They're not necessarily crafters. That kind of depends on a dwarf to dwarf basis. But my dwarves lost everything. And I mean everything. They lost all their ways of crafting stuff. They lost all their rune etching, all this other stuff that made them who they were. And now they're kind of this lost people. They have eventually now kept to some of their traditions, so slowly they got there. The dwarves and elves have weird reasons why they can't have a lot of kids in their lives. Dwarves have long courting rituals, and they were like, this is one thing we can keep doing, so we're gonna keep doing it. And it's like, all right, but you also have like you're at extinction level stuff, guys, so you need to do some stuff.
Not the most direct,
Yeah.
what is it? Alliteration, but not alliteration. Illusion, but is that kind of similar to how backwards humanity is in 40K? What do you think?
Oh, kind of, a little
this
bit, right?
Mechanicus?
Yeah, you turn it to be this thing that is very clearly, you can see what it's supposed to be, but it's at a different angle now, right? So the dwarves are very stuck in tradition, and also they don't care how you further the family name. As long as that clan name is at the top, you're good. You're a dwarven thief, you better be the best dang thief ever. You better make a thieves guild that the world around knows that thieves guild. And if your thieves guild gets a job, you do it, and you do it to a T. And it's like, all right, cool, that's a dwarf. And dwarves can do that, or they can be pirates. You gotta be the best pirate in the world. You gotta be the best engineer in the world. You've got to be world renowned eventually as a dwarf to further the clan's name. And that's what they want. So it doesn't matter if you're an honorable dwarf or a dishonorable dwarf. It matters that you are furthering the clan's name, right? So that's what I took about dwarves. What's up?
Be the best dishonorable dwarf.
Exactly. And for elves, I accidentally made a bunch of autistics. And I'm autistic, so it's weird it happened. But basically, for lack of a better terms, I gave elves all 3 to 5 special interests, and they need to find them in their lives. And when they find them, they will master that thing, right? They become the master of rapiers or just whatever it is. But if they don't, I actually have a consequence for elves, and I have another player in my team who is struggling to find that thing right now. They start to change. Their arms elongate, they gain fangs, their eyes grow like pitch red, and they just lose some, they like turn into ghoulish creatures if they don't find this thing within, I think I gave them, you have 200 years basically to find this thing, find at least 2 of these things, and if you don't, you start changing. And I was like, yeah, elves are the masters of things. That's in every fantasy thing. They're better at everybody at everything. But I was like, I want them to be better at one thing or 3 things or whatever.
Go after your personnel.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh wait, I was gonna. If they do find it, then what happens?
If they find it, then they choose to master that thing. It brings them this weird magical sense of joy. It's just a lot of dopamine. But they are able to basically revert that curse that is kind of put on their people. Have I figured out what put curse their people? No, not yet, not really. I have an idea, I have bullet points of what that is, and one player is trying to figure it out, so I'm like, cool, I've got to work on that. So I'm working on it now, actually.
And then another thing was,
Yeah.
what's like a couple examples like what they need to find?
So my one person has tried doing like, it's kind of anything, right? But it's like, I want to be the best ukulele player, whatever it is. Like, I want to be like, it's anything that's in the world. So he constantly will just pick up a thing in a store and try to do it and see if he feels anything, right? And I roll a percent die every time it happens, and there's like a small percent chance that that's the thing that did it.
And when, so they don't know what.
Correct. They don't know what it is. They have to find it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, two things.
Yes.
First of all, like hearing the elves and the dwarves makes me think of the unstoppable force is the immovable object. Where you have the dwarf is like, I'm gonna be the best, ukulele player.
Yeah.
And then this elf is like, well, I actually
am the best ukulele player.
But the second thing is, I was actually just in discussion. My brother's he does a lot of D&D 5e stuff in Canada, and we were talking about the campaign that he's just setting up, and he had a very, very he knew almost nothing about his own world.
Right.
And he pitched like a very, very skeletal concept to his players.
Right.
And then wanted to see like what they came back with just using like the standard stuff. And the notable thing was none of his players pitched a character that had magic, and none of them were human. And so he's like, well, I guess this setting magic either doesn't exist or it's very, very infrequent.
Yeah.
And humans may or may not be a thing.
Yeah. They're like super low population or
But
whatever.
he discovered that because he was just like, look, you guys can basically make decisions about this, and then I'll respond to that and then build out some of these things.
Yeah. Oh.
And if I just add to that, I love the idea, the concept of collaborative storytelling.
Yes.
So
That's what this is, right?
yeah, right. And so when I ask my players to do, hey, we're going to a town. Who remembers that town name? Oh yeah, right. And who's the leader of that town? I can't remember. The players tell me. And then when they engage that in the world, it makes it more alive for them.
Yeah, yeah. I've also been
Gets
able
more buy-in.
to get players to strictly just care about things by having them honestly build things in my world. One thing I think that I will get to eventually, or maybe not because we're running out of time, is trust your players to build something in the world. Because when they're building a character, they also have lived in this world, right? So my player who's lived in this village for 10, 15 years, they should know their neighbors, at least. So make 2 NPCs and give me 5 things that they have in their house, whatever it is.
Something that I always kind of struggle with is, and I know the next workshop will help with it, but with the VBGs and stuff, they're supposed to be these big freaking things. So why can a level 2 party even put up a fight with any members of the organization? They're not just, it's not Team Rocket like, oh, beat up kids. It's like, no, this is like, these are the crime lords. We're not going to just hire anyone who applies. So how do you make it to where a party even has a chance to get their foot in the door?
So I specifically, and this is personally for me, I write worlds where my party can be heroes. And I want them to have that like scope of they are a hero. There are people who are around your level or even higher than your level, but like that's what heroes have to deal with all the time, right? Batman has Darkseid in his world. That's crazy. The fact that a billionaire playboy who has some mental issues can end up fighting a dude with lasers that do really cool things when they're drawn really cool, and insta-kill anything that they touch, except Superman or the Justice League members when they do that. And yeah, put rules. But so parademons, right? Look at. I think one of my biggest things is Saturday morning cartoons. Who are your putty men of that? Who's your Starscream? Even though Starscream should probably be, since he's like a lieutenant, be more threatening than he is. Like, who's your Starscream? Who are your minion level people? Because like, yeah, they could hire a bunch of like high level adventurers, but they could also hire 100 goons for one of those adventures, right? And the goons, maybe they're not super great. They're like, level 2 thugs, which is, an NPC level. But like 20 level 2 thugs against 2 dudes, like they're not having to deal with adventurers all the time. And adventurers in my world, it's not an occupation that everybody picks up, right? So like that's kind of how I balance it, is most of the people they're dealing with are normal people, right? They're not level 3 casters, because a level 3 caster, that's insane, especially in my world. That's people who can like prestidigitation gets better with levels in my game. So like you can levitate more stuff with prestidigitation. You can move things around. Like you can basically do like a bunch of stuff with prestidigitation at level 3. If you're a level 1 caster, you can levitate a chair. And it's like, okay, cool. And at level 3, it's like, yeah, I can levitate this boulder and I can slowly move it, but I can eventually just put that in front of your door. And it's like, that's a crazy amount of power that now this level 3 character has in my world. So that's kind of how I balance it, is character levels are exponentially crazier than NPC levels. And the bad guys are ready to deal with player characters, but they're not expecting to deal with player characters every day, right?
Okay, yeah.
That's kind of how I view it.
Thank you.
Got a question? Oh, yeah, you.
How do
cleaning
you
the house
kind of
monk.
deal with a
You
player
way better.
who, in their back
Yeah.
pocket, reads like a war that might
Ah.
not have? in
All the
your-
GMs groaned a little bit. So, like I said, I don't have every piece of history figured out in my world, right? That it should leave some area for your players to create something like that. I try and sit down with my players before they build a character, be like, hey, what are you looking for? What are you looking at? Like, we already talked about that. And then, like, what type of character are you going to build? It's like, okay, I want to play a soldier. Like, they were a soldier and they're now a fighter and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, cool. Here are 3 conflicts that did exist in the world. Here's another, like, kind of skirmishy conflict that, like, these people kind of get into a lot. And you can create your own, but here are some, like, ideas of, like, things that have happened in the world that your character could be a part of. And that actually happened with one of my characters. They're like, I want to be a part of a secret organization. I was like, great, here's 4 of them, pick one. I don't, like, you don't know about the other ones, you know about the one you pick. And it's like, great, and none of the other players know about the secret organization. So, but yeah, that's usually what I'll do for, like, something like that, is I'll try and corral them to something that I've already created. And if not, I'll work whatever it is into the world. Granted, if they're like a 3-star general, they're level 1, that's a little weird, and I try and corral that behavior a little bit, especially. And I know new players, and you've mentioned that you had a bunch of new players at your table,
Yeah.
don't really understand level 1. Level 1 is Luke Skywalker
Yeah.
in the first movie.
Okay.
I want to go to Ted. What's the character's name? Luke Skywalker's friend that he wanted to go to his house. Go to,
You want to do go to Biggs.
Biggs, yeah. You want to go see
Yeah.
Biggs, right? Like that's your level 1 character, and figuring out that expectation is really important for me too. I'm gonna do one more thing, and then I'll get to the last few questions. Sorry, I'm going a little over my time. All right, so all right. What to keep in mind? You're writing a campaign in a setting. You're not writing a book. You are not writing a book. Your world is cool. Your NPCs are so cool. Your dragons, oh my god, they're so cool. I love your lore. Your party is the main character. Your setting is the playground, right? That's where they get to go and play. And I think that's one thing I've run into with a lot of DMs previous to me that I've played with, have not fully understand. Because they'll give a DM PC, and it's like, I understand you want to play too. Just wait for your turn when one of us is DMing. But it's fine sometimes to have a DM PC to get them through the thing or whatever, and DM PCs can be used correctly. But then they give the DM PC all the cool things to do, and they give the DM PC a lot of cool loot. And it's like, is this just your character for the story, and we're just kind of along for the ride? I'm noticing a pattern here that, like, they're succeeding all the time, and we're just kind of here. If you want to write a book, I'll read it. I'll read your short story. Please send it to me. But I'll use your ideas. I'll ask, but I'll use your ideas. So that's one really big thing for me. This is a very different medium to write for, because you don't know what the characters are going to choose. You don't have control over that. So you kind of have to build it like you're building a playground. You have to build it with opportunities for them to see things that they want to see and see things they don't want to see. Honestly, if it's a horror campaign, that's really important. So that's what you gotta have to keep in mind. Your NPCs are great. Your lore is amazing. There's a reason your players want to play in your world, but they are the main characters at the end of the day. A second thing, and this is something that I fell on, and I'm really glad I talked to some people, do your best to not be problematic and keep your ears and your heart open to criticism when it comes to that type of stuff. I was creating goblins that I thought were really cool. Turns out they were a little anti-Semitic because I was leaning on some old goblin tropes. Didn't realize those things were happening. And then one of my Jewish friends came up to me and was like, hey, I read your like thing. It's just like, maybe change this, this, and this about your goblins. And I'm like, thank you. Like, I'm blind to that. I didn't notice those things. Be open to that. Change those things. Because at the end of the day, this is a game about escapism. We don't need that stuff in our world, right? We don't need to lean on those things to make our worlds have conflict. War is horrible in of itself. Systemic slavery and racism, that stuff's not fun. That stuff we don't want to deal with. And it's fun. It's fine if you want to, at your table and with your players, talk and feel what you feel is appropriate and what they feel is appropriate. That's what session 0 is. That's what all these safety tools online are for. Those are things you should be using. And that can set your expectation on what you can bring to this table. So I implore you, talk to your friends, see what they say. Put this out on the internet. You will get some not so helpful comments, but you will probably get some helpful comments being like, hey, I noticed this thing. If you don't have community to give those things to. All right. And then, when are you done? Never. You're never done world building. You will always be world building. During your sessions, you will be writing notes. During your sessions, you will have to make things up on the fly, right? That is world building. Write it down. And if you make a mistake, or if you say a name, and your players are like, we got a name, we now know where to go, and you're like, oh shit, that wasn't the name, oh god, what am I doing? Next session is be like, hey guys, I made a mistake, a quick addendum, that's the name you're looking for, or you didn't get that name, or whatever. And now you changed the name of your big bad evil guy, because that was the name of your big bad evil guy. But you at least can have that, like, to create that story that is keep on going. You can backtrack, and you can talk to your players and be like, hey, I messed up on that one thing. Most players are pretty cool with it. Or if you think you can roll with it, see what you can do. Make that person not your big bad evil guy now. That's now a henchman of the big bad evil guy. And like I said before, steal ideas, it's completely fine. Obviously credit them if they are, credit and ask if it is your friend's ideas. That's really important. And then don't stress about getting everything right the first time. I built my world. I have changed so much. Like I said, I had 2 versions of my world. I'm on version 3, right? It's an ongoing process that you will continue to do as you play, after play, the next campaign, the next session, whatever it is. So, a few resources I wanted to make sure I mentioned at least. You're using Google Docs, please use folders. It will make your mind not melt when trying to scroll through your Google Docs and be like, all right, what did I name this folder that was this really important NPC's plan? Yeah, put that all in folders. And when you have started getting actual paragraphs in your docs, World Anvil is an amazing, I'm not being paid, World Anvil is an amazing software that basically you put your stuff into it, you hit enter, and it builds a Wikipedia page for your world. It's a little tedious to work with right away when you're not used to using that type of software, but honestly, I picked it up really, really quickly. I got about half my stuff in there right now, half my stuff that's done in there right now, and I've been able to go, all right, hey party, this is there, and now I've had players go, oh yeah, I read about that, my character would know this, or would my character know this thing? I'm like, oh my god, thank you, I didn't have to explain everything. You can explain everything, yes, you would know that thing. So that's really good. Campfire is another one, kind of does a similar thing to World Anvil. Can't speak to that one as much because I have used World Anvil and not Campfire. And then Incarnate is an amazing map maker. If you don't know about it, I assume most people in the room know about Incarnate, but Incarnate is a really intuitive map maker. I suggest using like one of these, a tablet, that's the word, because it's a little bit easier to draw on this than with a mouse. But it's a really, really intuitive thing that has helped me build battle maps and world maps. Because I couldn't do it before, because I'm bad at that type of stuff. And there's a lot of really good tutorials online for that stuff. So I'll take a couple questions, and then I'll let Jordan get on up here.
Could you compare enemies knowing, or how to deal with player characters, kind of, but mostly dealing with normal people?
Yeah.
Like cleaning your house normally, and then cleaning your house extra good when grandma or mom or whatever is visiting?
Right. Yeah, that's honestly what I would say too. Like, I tidy up. I don't clean every week. Once a month I do a deep clean, and I'm like, all right, yeah, no, this really needs to happen. I need to clean the sink, I need to clean the fridge, whatever the one really big task is. Most of the time I pick up the trash and my clothes, and they go in the hamper at this point now. And yeah, so that's a good analogy for that for sure. Anything else? All right, thank you guys, and thanks for coming. I'm really excited to have